Well, welcome everybody. First of all, I'll just acknowledge the fact that I'm sitting here on Wallamadigal land, people of the Eora Nation, and acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. And a big welcome to everybody else, and acknowledge to the traditional lands on whoever's lands you are on today. We're here to enjoy a fantastic presentation that I'm really looking forward to, called Let There Be Lights, a Techie's Guide to Holiday Illumination. I don't know about many of you, but this has been on my sort of back burner project list that I've been thinking through about for just a little while. And so hopefully this will set us up nicely for those projects we've all got, that we'd love to do into the future. Okay, housekeeping. This event is being recorded. A feedback survey will be sent out this afternoon, and respondents who respond to it will automatically enter into a prize draw for one of our fantastic mouse mats, or potentially some other things that we've got cooking up in the cute prize draw list. We really want to know about how we can improve these things, what future topics you'd like to hear, whether the time suits or it doesn't suit. If you've got any member demos or presentations about great projects you've been doing, or even if you want to do peering socials, just let us know, and we will do what we can. We would really like you to post any questions you've got into the Q&A or the chat. I've got my team monitoring that, and they'll feed them through to us, and they'll either be answered on the fly or answered throughout the course of the presentation, or even at the end, depending on how it best fits in. So please fire up your questions. There is, of course, a fine print thing here. The board adopted a code of conduct for all of our events, meaning basically, in summary, please play nicely, be polite to each other, be supportive, help everybody learn stuff, because ultimately we all want to do this and do this well. So support others to participate in this. If you can't comply with this play nicely rule, then we will remove you from the session, and you can appeal this decision, but we won't readmit you on the day. Okay, upcoming events. We've got another Convergent event coming up in person in Brisbane with David Lacey, who is from ID Care. So that will be talking about the human behind the hack, so human issues around restoring identity theft and so forth. That's on at the Garden State Hotel in Brisbane, and you can register for that now if you want to. And yeah, corporate members can invite or register up to 8 guests. So if you want to bring along a few people to that, be our guest. And of course, professional members can invite or register 1 guest. So we're really looking forward to having some extra people along to that one as well. Now I need to introduce Pierre Bierkes. Pierre is a software developer by trade and a holiday lighting enthusiast at heart. Over the last 5 years, he's embarked on a captivating journey of creating fully synchronized Christmas light shows that have become a cherished tradition in his community. In fact, it was actually one of the team, I think, who found his house and went, oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. So what started as a simple fascination with the magic of Christmas lights quickly evolved into a meticulous art form where every light dances in harmony with the holiday spirit. Beyond the dimmer and glow, he's delved into the practical aspects of this festive hobby, from carefully calculating costs to crafting and mounting props on his house while ensuring the utmost safety. And look, honestly, as I said earlier, this has been on my sort of background task list for a while, and hopefully Pierre will get us all set up and ready and raring to go with this. Over to you then, Pierre.
Thanks, Narelle. Thanks for the introduction. Could you share my screen for you?
There you go. I've killed mine. Over to you.
So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for the Internet Association of Australia for having me do this talk. It's a hobby I really enjoy getting into. So I can quickly show you the lights. So if you've ever driven around Australia or even in the States during Christmas time, you might have come past a house that looks like this. So did I kill my slides? Yes, sorry about that. A house that looks like this. Can you see my screen? Just confirm. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so a house that looks like this. So it's not your standard light show. It's a house that's synchronized to light. So they play music and everything seems to be dancing to the music. If you've ever wondered kind of how they do this, or you think I might like to do this one day, how do I get started in this? Then this is kind of the talk for you today. Who am I? My name is Pierre. I'm originally from South Africa. and I've been in Australia for 11 years now. So that's kind of where my accents come from. During the day, by trade, I'm a software developer. I do C# coding, and I've always had this passion for electronics and gadgets. So when I stumbled onto Christmas lights, it kind of was a natural fit, and I really just jumped into it with both feet. This is Alchemist Beach Lights. This is my show that I run every Christmas. So this was last year's video, and this is our 4th year. So this year now will be our 5th. So just to give you the scale of how my show looks like, this is it. And I'll go through this talk, and I'll cover like the technical aspects you would kind of need to be able to do this. I'll jump into the software you need as well to do this. And by the end of this talk, you should be able to feel comfortable, at least to have a play and put your own house light show in the software and be able to actually set something up like this. So running through my show, I have about 18,000 lights in my show, 18,000 pixels, 3 controller boxes, 4 remote boxes. I've got 7 boxes in total, and close to 150 props. Each prop is something you see on the screen. A candy cane is a single prop. A snowflake is a single prop. And all the singing faces. It takes months of work to synchronize them, because every single light in my show is addressable, which means I can control the color and the brightness on every single light. And the singing faces and everything that you see in the show is all planned very carefully, and there's not a light that's on that shouldn't be on at a point in time. As I said, I've got 150 props, close to 200 meters of extension cables running throughout the show. I've got hundreds of meters of conduit running through the show. So it takes a lot of work to set up something like this on the scale. And I still personally believe my scale is not as big as some of the other houses I've seen in Australia. So I take my hat off to them for all the work and time they kind of put into this. So where to start is normally the question I get asked the most. It's not my top question I get asked the most. The top question is how much is your electricity bill a month? That's my top question I get every year. But there are some people that come in and ask, like, how can I start? And if I were to start again, this is the kind of the advice I would give. So my first advice would be to join AskChristmasLighting.com. This is an Australian forum, great people on there, and they've got a 101 manual. So, and the reason I say you would need to go through this manual is to learn the lingo of what's in this lighting hobby. So it'll really tell you what pixels are, what power injection is, what a controller is, all this, like what is an IC and what is the little chips that's inside of each pixel. So just to get you up to date on the lingo of this hobby. It's 101 pages, ironically, or 102 pages, so it fits the name. It's great. You don't have to read it by heart, just skim through it. And then secondly, if you're more a visual learner or want to just check out some YouTube, Can a Spade Christmas. This is a great channel guy. I think his name is Jeff. He runs this channel, very fun channel. He's also electronics, and he just loves light. So it's a really fun channel to check out. And last but not least, on Facebook, join the official X-Light support group. So everybody in this hobby, I think this group has got 25,000 people in there. Not all active, but everybody wants everybody else to succeed. We are here to kind of spread like the Christmas spirit, and everybody wants to help out. If somebody has a problem, there's 20 people trying to answer and help a person out and give them advice, and so they don't make any wrong steps or burn down their house or anything like that. So nobody wants to see anybody get hurt, and everybody just wants everybody to succeed. So this is a great group. If you join at this time of the year, you're just going to see post after post after post every day, because the people in the USA is already setting up now for Halloween shows, which starts on the 1st of October. So it's a great place just to get an idea of what this hobby is about, and just to see the community and how supportive they are. So I've kind of sat back and thought, like, what is the main things of a light show? Like, what do you need mainly to start a light show? So I've broken it down to 4 things. first you need props. So you need a candy cane, or you need a snowflake, or you need something that you want, that you like, that you want to have in your show. And for that prop, you need lights. So that's the second part. And we'll go through each of these now in a bit more detail. Thirdly, to control these lights, you need to plug them into a controller. So that's the third component. And for the controller to know what to send to these lights, you need a show player. So those are my main 4 elements of a light show. And let's step into the first one, is props. So in most of our, because it's such a big hobby in the United States, they have pretty much led the way in the designs of these props. And the hobby has matured to a stage now, at least, where we have local Australian vendors who can also, which partnered with the people in the USA to cut these props for us in Australia. So anything you see in the States or in any video, you can most likely get in Australia. And if you can't get it, you can make it as well. These props are made out of 10mm Coro boards, and they cut. So we have these 3 vendors in Australia. Extreme Lighting Displays, a guy named Troy. He runs it. He cuts all our Bisqueo USA vendor stuff. We got Christmas Props Australia, which is another vendor that has about I think they have over 500 props that you can choose from. So there's a big variety. And then we also have In Creations, and cuts them. So as you can see on the top left, we have just a normal snowflake that's just white. And then on the right, we also have, they started doing prints on top of these boards. So when you buy something, it'll look good during the day as well. It doesn't only have to be white. There's a range of designs to choose from. And then at the bottom, you can see we have some Australian inspiration props, like Bluey and those characters as well. And we have stuff for Anzac Day and everything. So you can make a very personalized display from what you like. Secondly, this is what it's mostly about, is the lights. These are called pixels in our terms in the hobby. Each pixel is addressable, and each pixel has 3 LEDs inside of them, RGB to make the colors. And they come in different shape and form factors. So you can see the top left, we have bullet nodes. This is the most common one in our hobby that people use. It fits in these 10mm boards pretty well. At the bottom left, you can see we've got square sizes as well. So these are useful if you have a prop that goes against a wall, so it's more flat, where the bullet sticks out too much. Or you might want to zip tie that to some conduit or anything like that. Then you can also get the strip light, which a lot of people use, which is normally the rolls. You see these in shopping centers sometimes, like where you can buy them, but those are not individually addressable ones. These are, so they actually have a little chip on inside each light, which controls what they should be on, like what color and what brightness. At the bottom, you also get a thing called a flood, which is just a very strong pixel inside of a flood. You normally take these, shine it against a house or shine it up against a tree. So even if you don't want to do holiday lights, you can still get addressable pixels and use it in your backyard as for landscaping, or in your alfresco or something fancy like that. I've seen people put strip lights in the alfresco, and then they don't do holiday lighting, but they would make it go red when somebody's at the front door, like that. So like a few techie things like that. So it's a very fun hobby to get into, and this is just touching the basics of it. And then you can also buy covers that you can actually glue on, and some actually screw on, which make them look more like traditional Christmas lights, like the C9s at the top right. When you buy pixels, you normally have to pick between 5V and 12V. That's a big debate in our hobby. It's like if you go into that forum and you ask that question, it'll be a big debate again every time. There's pros and cons for each one, for 12V and 5V. 5V, you need more wire because you're going to have to be power injecting. So or you can do shorter runs. But if you have a long set of lines, 12V is probably better because 12V can carry longer. Let's have a quick look. I think I covered most of those. And these, when you buy them, you can either choose 50 or 100. They come in those 2 quantities. So you can plan out your display, and then you can kind of write down how much you need and how many of each you need. So you can plan it out. How the pixels work. just to give you an overview, this is some strip that you can see. So for addressable pixels, you either have a built-in IC inside of the pixel that can control what it's doing, or there's an external IC. In normal pixels we use, it's all built in, but on strip you do get the option of having the external IC. So that is the black part you see on this, the part over there. So that's the IC, and this IC controls these 3 LEDs. So now if you have a set like this, you can't control every one individually. You have to control 3 at a time. And they come in, and there's also different ones that you can control only every 6. So it depends on how much granularity you need for these things. So there's a saying also, friends don't let friends use strip in this lighting hobby, because they are much more fragile. If they bend, they break easier. The connections break, and it's harder to seal them again, because you have to think, for Christmas lights they go outside, so they're waterproof, and as soon as you have to fix one, you have to cut them on this line, you have to solder them, and you have to reseal them for waterproofing. So it's much harder to repair one of these pixel or the strip lights than it is to just cut out a light and put in a new light. That's just said, right? So I just put a few protocols down. There's a bunch of protocols in this on this. I can have different IC chips. We have the 2811s, 2812s, and another common one is the GS8208s, which is used. So in strip light, what we'll have is the WS2811s will have 3 lines: a positive, a negative, and a data. And then anywhere in that line, if a light goes out, everything after that is not working. So then you have to cut out and fix them. But something like a WS2815 has got a backup data. So you still provide the positive, negative, and data, but because it's got a backup data line, if one light goes out, the rest will work. But if 2 lights, if 2 lights in a row goes out, then it goes off. So it kind of piggybacks off each other. So, and that's how they work. So how they work is when a controller sends, the controller would know how many lights is connected to it on a port. So when the controller sends out, I've got this candy cane with 100 lights on them, they should be they should be red, with some of them which should be white. So what it does is for every frame, it'll send a bunch of data, normally in like a E131 packet, to the pixels. And what the ICs will do basically on the pixel, it will take the first part it needs, the first little data chunk it needs to know what color and what brightness to be, and then the IC would pass on the remaining data to the next one, and then the next one would take what it needs and it'll pass on the next. It's like that whisper game where people would whisper something and it'll just pass on the data. And that's kind of how this works, as the controller just sends all the data it needs to the first pixel, and then the first pixel will take what it needs, basically enhance the signal, and send up the remaining data to the next one. And that's a simplified way to think about it. So that's why you can't have a controller and then plug in a light 15 meters away, because the signal can't travel that far to that very first light. And then there's, if you go into a bit more detail on there's a thing called a null pixel, which is an IC without a light, which you could put in the middle or more at the start to boost the signal so you can get it further. So there's a bunch of more technical detail in pixel lights, which is covered in the 101 manual. So I'm not going to go too much into that, but this is the gist of how addressable pixels work. They each have a little chip in them. They process the data and they pass it along. So now that brings us to the controllers. So the 2 main ones in our hobby, in bigger display Christmas shows, are the Falcon controllers, which is the top left, is made by Pixel Controller, and we also have a Culp controller, which is made by Culp Light. So both of these 2 at the top have 16 outputs. You can see the green connections. They output positive, negative, and data, and they all fuse with a 5 amp fuse. And these boards are capable of outputting 1024 pixels per port. So each one of these boards can output over 16,000 lights, can handle it. That being said, if you run 16,000, there's a limit to how big the refresh rate is. So if you fully load the board up, you can probably get around 20 frames per second. But generally speaking, we try to keep it lower, let's say around 800 pixels per port, because then you can get a better refresh rate. So you can get up to 40 frames a second. And I'll talk about the 40 frames, 20 frames when we actually go demo into X-Lights in the software we use to create the lights. So at the bottom left, if you just want to experiment a little bit, or you need something small for your alfresco or something like that, the bottom left board is a great board. This is made by Hanson Electronics, which is an Australian company. In Australia, it runs it. The boards are relatively inexpensive. It's like $30 or $40. And what this board is, it fits on top of a Raspberry Pi. So it's like a cape. So you put it on top of a Raspberry Pi. You can control 2 sets of pixel strips, like two lines. And this is really good to get into it if you just want to do something really small or first year. There's also other really cheap boards out there which you can buy online, just if you want to get your feet wet. And then the final controller I just want to touch on is an Advotech controller. This is also an Australian company. They do a lot of the big shows. Yeah, I know they have these controllers set up, and they have commercial board, like a commercial set going. So they have really good boards, and they can run many of these IC different protocols, where some of the cheaper boards just can't do that. To give you an idea of how you would use a controller and how you would set it up, this is a picture of my first controller box that I built. So I went to a plastic company. I got them to cut out a sheet of plastic for me in my shape I wanted. And so I have 2 power supplies sitting at the bottom. Each of those power supplies is a 29 amp 12 volt power supply. So it's a 350 watt on each of them. I've got the Falcon board sitting on the top, and another small Falcon distribution, like a expansion board sitting at the back, which I can connect to remote boxes. So I can run Ethernet to small boxes, which just has a little receiver. And this board can control not only the devices connected to it, but it can send data out to those small receivers, and those small receivers can have its own data or its own pixels connected to them. So, and at the bottom here, I have 2 boards there for power injection. So what is power injection? Basically, when you run lights, when you connect it to the power over the distance, as they run, as they light up and things, you lose some of the voltage. They use it up, and at the end of the line, you might not get a strong current, right? So the right picture here, you can see there, when you measure the voltage in the beginning, it's 12 volts. Or 12 point something volts, and as the lights go on and off at the end of the line, if you measure it, it's 9 volts. So that's called voltage drop. And it's not only the lights that use it, but it's also the resistance in the wire of the pixels as well. So when you buy these pixels, you can choose different wire sizes, and you would kind of want to get the thickest one you can. So 18 gauge is a really good one to use. There is 22 gauge, but that's too small. People just generally say go 20 gauge or above, 18 if you can. So, but if you want to learn more about power injection, these 2 pictures was actually taken from a really, really good YouTube video called Power Injection by Bill Porter. So highly recommend this. He can explain it so much better than I can, and he explains it in a sense of, he actually has pixels and Christmas trees showing you how it works. Pixel voltage drop is much more noticeable in 5 volts pixels versus 12 volt pixels, just because these pixels all work with 5 volts. But when you buy a 12 volt pixel line, they have a little resistor or regulator inside of them, which drops the voltage down to 5, so the light can work. So you can, and then the 12 volt just carries further though, so you can have way more lights before you have to power inject. For 5 volts, once the power drop goes down, the voltage goes down, you can visibly see it. You can see if you do something at full white, won't look white anymore. It'll go like a red color, and at a certain point, you just won't have enough power, and then you would just want to get any light outputs. and that's where you inject power. And this is where power injection is coming from. So you basically take positive and negative and you inject it at another section in your line. So for 5-volt pixels, they say you should try and inject so no pixel is more than 50 away from a power source. So here you can see power is on the beginning. We have 150 pixels in the slide, and they power inject at the 100 mark, because pixel 51 will be 50 away from the injection point. So no more than 100, they say. We get away with more because we don't run our lights at 100% brightness. Typically, these light shows you see, holiday light shows, if you drive around, they would run mostly 20, 30, 40%. They won't run the lights at 100% brightness, just because you'll have to build bigger boxes as well. It's just not, you don't gain much. I run my show at 30%. I run my really dense props at 20% brightness. So, and it's more than enough. I've got a street light right in front of my house, and it's hardly noticeable. So this is how you power inject. You basically take power and you inject it as you need. And again, vendors has made it really easy, because you can buy, when you buy the lights in a set of 100, it's got a plug at the beginning and the end, and the next 100 has got a plug at the beginning and the end, and they sell these power injection tees where you just connect them and you can just plug in power. So you don't actually have to cut anything, but it's definitely good to know why we do it. And we also power inject not only if we do a long run. So because if you look at the fuses on the controller board, they're 5 amp fuses, right? So if you take the fuse size and you then divide it by the pixel per current, so normally these pixels are running about 0.055 amps a pixel if you run it full white, and I times it by 0.3, which is 30% brightness, I can run about 300 pixels before that fuse is going to start be complaining at me. So if I have a prop that takes 600 or 800 lights to use, I can power it from the board, but I have to power inject, because as soon as I go over 300, I'm just going to blow a fuse. So you want to inject extra power to be able to run this. And this is also the same. So when you plan your display, those power supplies I used is, as I said, 350 watts. So you take 29 amps. I never want to go above 80% on my power supply. So I times it by 0.8. And I do the same calculation. So I know, based on that power supply, I can do roughly around 1,400 pixels for that power supply. And I've got 2. So I can do, I can do close to, 2,800 pixels from that controller without additional power injection. So if I do additional power injection, I have more controller boxes with power, and that's just how I power these boards. And then the final one is the show player. So most shows out there would be running a Raspberry Pi as their show player. It's more than capable enough. They use a software called Falcon Pi Player, and this is how they run their show. But you can also use a PC to run Xschedule, which is basically part of the Xlite software. It only works on PC. It doesn't work on Mac anymore. So Falcon Pi Player, it's got another boost for it now. So everybody's using a Falcon Pi Player. So let's dive into Xlite. I'm going to dive into the actual demo of the software and how you would set this up and how do we create these light shows, because I spent months creating and designing these shows that fit on my lights. It's all well and good buying the things, but you have to sit down and sit with the song you'd really like, and then sequence it and plan out what should light up where and when it should light up. And we're going to dive into that right now. And when you do a song, you just have to be prepared to listen to the song over and over and over again. So I listen to Christmas music the whole year. I've got my favorites. And I like to see Xlite also as a try before you buy. This is really helpful for people that's starting out, which you don't know what you want. I made the mistake in my first year where I just bought a lot of things which I probably didn't need to. And it's just because I got so excited seeing these shows that I just bought. And if you jump into Xlights, it's free open source software. Everybody's using this software, and you can plan out your entire display. You can see what you like, what you don't like. You can add the props you see from all the vendors. You can play a bit of sequencing. You can see if you like to sequence. You can get an idea of what you like on your house, and then from there you can export an Excel sheet, and it'll tell you exactly how many lights was on the things you needed, and you can plan, and you wouldn't overbuy, and you would kind of know exactly how many controllers you would need. So it's a great way to get into this hobby without spending a single cent yet. And after today's demo, I'm hoping you'll be able to go away and do this on your own display and have a quick look. So I'm going to quickly jump into Xlights. So let's do this. Everybody see my screen on Xlights? Perfect, thank you. So this is Xlights. As I said, it's a free software. It's got 3 major sections in the software: controllers, layout, and sequence. So controllers, we don't really have to touch now because you won't have a controller yet when you start. So we can come back to this. This is the layout tab. So the very first thing you would want to do if you're getting started is take a picture of your house. I just went to Google, found a random Australian homes picture. So I'll just be using that. You click on this background image, and you click demo house, and there it loads the picture of this house, and you can scroll and zoom in and out. So I'll set the brightness to 20% on this 20. There we go. So this is your layout. You can do it in 3D. I'm not going to show 3D today just because it's not hard. It's just more time consuming. So you would take a picture of your house and you put it into Xlights. And now the very first thing you might want to do is, let's say we want to start putting in some outlines on my house. So you've got all these models at the top, which you can pick from. So there's icicles and there's candy canes like this. But the one we're interested in is not a single line, but called a polyline, because we want to do multiple lines, right? So if you click it once and you drag something, it'll drag and drop, and that's it. If you click it again, you can click and stop and drop it, and then click again, and it'll just continue going. So I'm going to click once. I'm going to click where I want to start. So let's say I want to start over there. I'm going to click over there. I just want to get an outline of my house. So you don't even have, if you just want to play with it, you don't even have to go too much into detail on this. So I'll do that, and I'll press escape, and that's the first line I want to do. I'm just going to do another one on this side of the house. There we go. And 2 single lines, I'll just create a single line there. And basically that is the outline. That is how simple it is to initially just set up an outline. You would kind of measure these walls and say, so if you click on any of these, it's got these properties on the left. So you can see this line, it's got 50 lights. So if you measured your wall and you know you can't fit 50 lights there, you can only put 40 lights there. So you put 40 there, and it will change. The same for this side. I might make this 35 just to show the difference there. So you can see if you can only fit 10 lights in there, you can see it becomes really distributed there. So we can set up all these ones individually. The polylines, you can actually click on a thing called the individual segments, and then you can say this one is 19, 14. So you can start upping these lights. And what you would do is you would lay out your whole outline like this. So let's say we keep that outline there. We click on the window frame. We might want to add a window frame nicely to the front over there, and we want to add another one to the side over there. Let's say we want a big tree like I have. So you would grab the tree model there, and we're going to put a tree over there. And then our tree, nobody can see it from the back, so I don't need a 360 tree. I only want a half a tree, so I'll make this 180. And then and then we'll set up how many lights we want in this tree. So this tree, the number of strings on this thing is how many connections to your controller will you have. So let's say we have a board of 16 16 outputs, so we want to have each one its own output. We leave this at 16, and we might want to say we want to connect 100 lights. Let's make it 150 lights per connection to the controller, and we want to go 75 up, 75 down, so we'll grab it to 2. So there's our tree. We might add 1 or 2 more things. So again, arch, we can add an arch. I like to have an arch over there, and then you can just copy and paste these arches. So you can see we've already got quite a nice display going. I might add 1 or 2 more things. So let's add. So now let's say you bought some from a vendor. These are just the standard models that comes in Xlight, but as I said, there's almost 500 props out there easily. There's a thing called create a new download. I'll just drag one of those on. And what this would do is it would go and get the latest lists online. And then you can now pick from any range of 3D props, right? So let's say we have some candy cane. So we will go Christmas, and let's see, candy cane's over there. And we'll take this candy cane. This candy cane has got 99 lights in them. It shows them there, 99. And we'll just insert that. So there's our candy cane, already made for us by the vendor. And we'll copy and paste this a few times. So, and this is how you would also see when you buy the candy cane, like when the controller needs to tell something where to switch on, it needs to know where these lights are. So you need to wire it in a specific way. So anything on the screen, you can right click on. So you can right click on this and go to a wiring view. And in the wiring view, you can see this is the default wiring that the vendor suggests you use. So you start at light number 1, you plug in your first light over there, and you continue around like this, and then you come back there. And that's how your lights are. This is how it's set up. So this is what we are going to tell the controller. This is how we've set up our lights. So it knows physically, if I say turn on light 50 on this candy cane, it knows that is light 50 and not somewhere else. And you can change this. You can right click on this, and you can go into the model data, and you can change this easily. You can change this. And the software is really advanced. You can take video of something you've built and just put the video on it. It'll bring in the prop. It'll create it for you, and then you can just say how you wired it. So, and this is with everything. The arches there, you can see it's got a green and a blue dots on the side, and we've got there starting locations is green. So we're going to start on the left and go around. So if we wired something the wrong way around, and we can just swap them around. So you would set up your whole show like this, and you can view your wiring. And some of these wiring diagrams are big. If I take an example of something more high res that I have, we'll go to, let's see, Gilbert Engineering. HD, this took for the. This is the one I have. So I'll insert this, and as you can see, it's pretty big. And to make sure I wire it correctly, I come to this, and you can zoom in, and you can see a pattern. This is how I will wire the things. So after you've set up all your props on your show, you're kind of ready to go, in the sense where you can now start playing with Xlights and seeing what effects you can do on this. I'm not going to set up everything else. I've actually created a little demo folder, which I'll switch to now. I just want to show you.
Quick question there, Pierre, if
Yes.
I might interrupt. So when you get these props, you just get like basically that board, and then you've got to physically shove all the LEDs into place and connect the dots.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally, you have to wire them. You don't buy them pre-packaged as a thing, although I'm sure by the sound of it, you can buy them pre-packaged or wired up.
Our vendors don't. So we've made some jokes with one of the vendors to just sell us pre-pushed pixel lights, because it takes quite a bit of time to push these lights in there. Yeah. So I guess they could do it for premium. but you would generally, it'll just make shipping hard because the lights are so heavy. Like this is I've got 100 in front of me over
And
here,
they fall apart.
and they pretty heavy. Just 100 of them. So if you think of something, a big prop like that, where I would really pay somebody to do that, 1,400 lights or something in a prop would just add so much weight, and the shipping costs would just be enormous, especially for us in Perth. So it's easier to just get the lightweight board and then do it at home. So this is exactly why. So if you know the candy cane is 99 nodes, I will go buy a set of 100. I won't buy 250s. I'll buy 100, and then I'll just use 100.
Gotcha. Actually, there was another question back too about the controllers. Do the controllers talk DMX and use universes, or what is the protocol or language? I think you said E131 or something.
Yes. So the controllers are normally can send E131 data. It has a DMX output as well. So like the Hanson board has got two, can drive two sets of pixels strips, which I believe will be E131 data, and it has a DMX channel one as well, and I believe the third one was it can do 2801 chips. But yeah, generally these boards are E131 by default, and then you can also change it where they've made a bit more of a lightweight protocol, DDP, which they call it DDP. It's just the packet sizes are just way less. But I'm driving moving heads as well from DMX this year, so I've got some moving heads going from DMX and E131. Most of my stuff is set to DDP, but I do have one that's set to E131 just because there was some issue I had.
Okay, back to the demo. Well done. Keep going.
All right, so now we have these props. I'm going to just add a controller just to show you if you did buy a controller. Like you would know how many lights you have and what controllers you would need if you want to have distributed or a nice central place. So let's say we have a central place right there by the front door. That's where we'll put our controller, and we're going to buy one of these, the more used ones. So we would just add an Ethernet controller on the controllers tab. I would come in on this and say, what's the IP address of this? So it might be 192. Like 168.0.50 or whatever it is, and this is the protocol. So you can see here what I want to be using. So I'm going to be using E131. You can use ArtNet or there's DDP. There's a few protocols in this you can set, and it does work. Yeah, it does work with universes. So before they made it simple to get into the hobby, because the hobby has matured in such a way that it's making it really easy for people to get into the hobby without knowing the nuts and bolts behind the scenes. So when I got into this 5 years ago, we didn't have a thing where you can automatically just drag and drop things on the controller. You would physically go and work out which universe you want to use. You would set up multiple lines on this, specifying this is the universe number and this is how many channels, and then you would kind of have to do this. You don't have to do that anymore. I still suggest you do and you learn this. It's always good to know, but you don't have to kind of know. So this, you can select the vendor. So we said Falcon controllers are pretty popular, and we got let's say F16V3. So default port brightness, full X-Flex control. There we go. So I would say that there's the 16 ports, right? So this is my controller I have. Now, this is what I mean by they're making it easier. They made this button called Visualize. So you can click this Visualize button, and a screen will pop up. Let me just make this slightly smaller. And these, on the left, you can see these are all the ports available on my controller. And I'm going to connect all the arches to port number 1. So I'm going to put an arch on port 1. And that's it, right? So I'll put another arch on port 1. So I'll chain it after this one. So I will plug I'll plug in arch 1 to port 1, and then I'll plug in arch 2 to arch 1. So I'll daisy chain them like that. So there's 100 pixels there, and I can probably run 200. So I'll just put all my arches on this, on that port, and I might put 2 candy canes on that that port and maybe 2 more candy canes on this port. So you can kind of plan out your ports. I don't want to go over, I don't want to go over 300 pixels per port without power injection. So I would rather buy more controllers and have less pixels per port, just in case a light goes out, that my whole display doesn't go out. Like if I put 1,000 lights on one port, if one of those lights go out, I lose 1,000. But if I split them up nicely and I don't put more than 200 lights per port, then all of a sudden, if I lose one, it's not the end of the world. The show looks great still. I can go out and fix it. I'm just going to remove these. So I might use this controller for my mega tree, right? And remember, in our mega tree, we said we're going to be using 16 ports, right? So, and you can see there it says strings 16. So if I drag the tree onto port 1, you can see it puts all of them onto this controller, 150 lights each. So it just becomes really easy to set up where things connect without you physically having to set up multiple things and planning the universes and stuff. So, and then you just hit save, and then that is how you connect these. So when you now click on these, they would have a controller connection to port 1. And there's a bunch of things you can do on this as well. Another useful thing on the matrix, for instance, you would want to have a person singing, not a singing prop. So you can have singing props to sing, but you don't have to. You can just use the mega tree itself. So it has a place where you can click on faces and just add a face, and let's say a demo face, right? And you can say matrix, and you can download images. And when you click on download images, there's a bunch of free ones in the software. You can see there. And then when you put that on your tree, it'll light up. So you can make things sing on the tree. You don't have to have a singing face somewhere else. You can have it on a matrix or on something. So you can just download that. So I'm going to switch to a folder I've already done. So it's the same house. I just added some mini trees as well, and some snowflakes. And the only other thing I've done is I have grouped things. So you can drag what you want to group, or you can just pick it from here. So I can say tree, those 8 trees. I'm going to right click and I'm going to add the selection to a group, to an existing group, or create a new group. So I created these things called groups. All group, I have an all group with everything in there. You can see everything goes yellow. A candy canes group, which is I put all my candy canes in. And the reason you would do this is so you don't have to individually go and put the effects on each one of them. You can put it in the group and it'll apply to all of them. So now we're happy with our layout. This is our first year. We're kind of happy with this. We want to see how it looks. So what we're going to do is we can create a new sequence, or we can, I'm just going to open a sequence. Before I open, let me show you new. New, you can choose animation or a musical sequence. So some people don't have speakers, or the first year they just want the light to twinkle, right? They just want something nice to show somebody. And then they'll do animation, there's no music. And if you choose music, then you have a music file, and then it loads the music file and you can put effects on. So I'm just going to pick animation for this first one. And this is what I mean by frames per second. So this is how fine-grained you want the timings to be on the refresh rate. So 40 frames is, I normally pick 40 frames, but you can go 20 frames. So if you fully utilize your boards, you won't be able to get 40 frames. So you would just use 20.
So quick time check here, Pierre. We've only got 10 minutes, well, 9 minutes left now.
Sure.
So
I'll be quick. And then so I'll just do this and say done, just to show you how to do this. So this is the basic screen. There's our house preview, and there's all our groups at the top, and there's our individual things. So this is the sequencer view. You got all your effects sitting at the top. I don't know if you can see the mouse there, but you got all these effects at the top here, which you can add. There's a bunch of effects. There's an on effect. There's a marquee effect. There's a bunch of effects on this. So the one that gets the most compliments and the easiest just to put on is this thing called the butterfly effect. If I put the butterfly effect on let's say we drag it and we put it on this all group, which has everything in it, there you can see everything goes, that's the colors it will be, right? So And that's it, right? If I save the sequence, I upload it to my controller and I play it, that's what my house will look like. Exactly like you see it there is what you'll see outside. So that's essentially how simple it is to get started in this. And you can go more advanced, and you can, so they have an off effect, which you think, why would I ever use an off effect? But you would have everything in the all group, and I might not want to have something on, right? So I don't want my mega tree to be on at this point in time. So I'll put this off effect there, so you can see everything is on except the tree. And then you could, and on each of these, you can right click and you can add layers to this. So you can have multiple layers. So you can stack your effects. So I'm gonna basically put off the tree, and then I'm gonna put something like another effect on my tree that spirals around. So you can play with the settings, how thick things are, if they appear 3D. You can change the colors. It's very easy to do like things like this. And then you up the speed. And then that looks pretty good. So I've created a small one with some music, and I purposely used free music, which you can easily put on YouTube, so the audio won't get blocked. So I'll click this render button just so it recalculates everything. But to give you an idea, I just put something really quickly together just to outline the house outlines in a certain color. And this, I don't know, did I share my sound? That's the good question. Can you hear anything? All right. Let me, should I share sound? Yeah, let me just quickly share sound. I'll share sound. So you can see I made little shock waves on the snowflakes. I made twinkles on these little mini trees. These outlines go, and I had a big shockwave go around. So just with this was about 10 minutes of playing in the software, but just put a single strand effect on your arches, so it'll just move across. So it's very easy to just put any basic effects on to see what you like and what you don't like. Just put that away. And that is Xlights in a whole. So now you can go tools, export, and you can export the models. So then that'll give you all the models you've added, how many lights are in them, so you can have a list of like a buy, like what you need to buy. And that's just a quick overview of how to plan it in this. Let me get back to my slides. And so that is Xlights in the whole. I've got other slides, and I've got questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, we're on 5 minutes to the hour. The only question we've got at the moment is actually a comment. Freaking amazing, thank you, from Nathan.
All right.
So I invited anybody to ask any questions you might have throughout all this. So let me get this straight. So Xlights is basically the planning tool that shows you how to lay it all out and map out where you put the different pieces into the control. So then you export that and feed it into the controllers. Am I correct there? Or
yeah. So after you've done, let's say you've done a one song in Xlights and with your layout, what you would do is you would just you hit that little paintbrush icon to render everything, so it calculates everything, and you hit save. And what that would do is it would create a file in the directory where it'll be used by the show player. So in Xlights as well, you'll be able to click upload to controller. So in Xlights, there's a function under tools, FPP connect.
Yeah. So
if you have, as I said, you can run a Pi or something like that. You use FPP connect, and you can just from there you pick this. It'll automatically detect the file you just saved, and you can just click upload, and it'll upload to that.
Got it.
Which means the show player can play it. Even simpler, if you use a PC, you don't even need that. There's another app that comes with Xlights is called Xschedule, and you just point it to your same show directory you're using, and it'll pick that up.
Yeah, so Xschedule then becomes the player that you're using to drive the lights. Oh wow! Yeah, we have another comment here. Well, actually, no, it is a question. Friends don't let friends use strip, but is there a simple to mount straight line replacement for outdoor pixels?
So for outdoor lines, generally what we see is people to go buy conduit, and they drill holes in them. Being the first year for me, so when I was in my first year, I didn't own a drill press, and I didn't want to. And I really like my straight line. So what I've done is I've bought a thing like this trim. So it's basically 4mm Coro board, which you can just zip tie to. Which you can just zip. Yeah. So you can just zip tie it to conduit. So I bought this thinking, oh, maybe the second or third year I'll just use the template of those holes to drill out my conduit. But this has been holding up for 4 years straight now. So, and I'm planning to still use it this year, and then maybe next year I'll drill out some conduit. But this is really helpful because you just go buy conduit, you zip tie this, and then you can decide I want to put lines every second hole, every 2 inches, because these holes are 1 inch apart, and you just pop in the lights, and then there you go. And for my house, I have, and if you can see on the top of these sections there, I have little zip tie mounts, and you can see it on the right there on the wall. I sprayed them the same color as the house, and I just stuck them on with some silicone. So now I just I put the conduit next to it, I zip tied, and then it looks like this.
Yeah, wow.
So that's how I mount.
Yeah. So you didn't actually answer the question, how much is your electricity bill?
Because it's LEDs, it's so low light. It's I don't think it adds more than $30 or $40 to the bill. And it's worthwhile. We get so many people that come and enjoy the light show. It's not even a show anymore. It's more like an experience where people come to, experience the Christmas spirit. And we get comments. We have people that can't believe somebody would do this for free, or knows even how to do this, because some people want to do this, they just can't. They might not be able to afford it, but it gives them a way to break away from reality and come experience something nice.
I mean, we are talking milliwatts really per strip, aren't we? Yeah.
Well, it adds up.
It adds up.
It adds up. To get in, and it's not the cheapest hobby. I've got a slide I can show you the costs of these things. So, for instance, I have these wings at the front of my house. Those there where people take selfies.
That looks amazing.
Yeah, so people take selfies on those, and that's what everybody has on the call, right? So, to do something like wings, we can break it down. So, you buy these wings from Extreme Lighting Displays. They go for about $120 for these, because they're big. They're so big. Each wing has 500 pixels, so you need 1,000 pixels. So 1,000 pixels will cost you roughly $450. And these things are without shipping, right? So you need 1,000 pixels. You need a controller box, or at least something to be able to play this. So I've got a little remote box which I put by my wings. So to build that box, I need to get a waterproof box. I need to get a power supply, a little power distribution in there.
So you're using just standard power supplies, like what sort of power supply? What sort of power supplies do you use?
The power supplies I use is Meanwhile power supplies. They convert. I use 12 volt, so they convert AC to DC. So it's a 350 watt 12 volt power supply. Right. Meanwhile is pretty good because they got extra protections in them built in compared to some of the cheaper brands, but they're really great. So, and then obviously a mount for the wings. So you're looking at a minimum, let's say for the wings, for at least $750. And that's just to give you a rough idea of the cost involved in something like this. They say
just for a set of wings.
They say bargain on about $1 per pixel. That's kind of the saying in the US is like $1 a pixel if you work everything out, because you still have to go buy all the tools, all the controllers, all the wires, everything else you need. So they roughly about $1, and I can attest that that's pretty true. And
that doesn't take into account the amount of time you spend on it too.
Oh yeah, the time that goes into it as well.
Yeah, I have to ask the question about security, being a bit of a security nerd.
Yep.
I suppose the security, you're doing all of this as a wide thing, so people really either need to attack it remotely or physically intercede into your installation to attack it, don't they?
Yes, so I use Xschedule, which means I actually have network running out, so you can create a segregated, you can create a different network if you want. I don't even create a different network. I do have network points running out, so if somebody comes in, it's the same as if they come into my house and they rip off a camera off the wall and the network is hanging there. I've got a Ubiquiti gateway behind that, which only allows certain MAC addresses to connect. So they can't use that, and I don't use wireless for anything else. So in a networking perspective, it's secure.
Yeah, so Mac layer security is a good idea with it. Yeah, and lock it down or run it on a separate window, because I mean these things are notoriously insecure. Oh, and I've just noticed the time. It's now 1:02. Do we have any further questions? Because we really should try and stick to time with these things, but they're always really interesting talks. Any further questions? Oh, there's a comment here. Definitely a community experience. Thank you, Pierre. So you've got a fan in the local neighbourhood there from Sean. Anybody else got any other questions about how to do all this? Because I mean, I noticed at the beginning that the plugs all look to be fairly standardized, so you can sort of daisy chain these things one after the other with standard plugs.
Yes, when I started there, it's a 13.5 millimeter outdoor plug, so it's waterproof, so they can connect. They seem to have settled on like a standard called X Connect now. So when you buy the Pixels, they just all come with X Connect. You can still prompt for the older ones, but X Connect is pretty good. It's just 2 plastic connections. They look. I don't know if you can see my screen, but it's all.
No, we're just seeing the thank you
video, the video of this, but they kind of look like this.
Oh yes, I see them. Yeah.
So they look like that.
Yeah, they're sort of like they look like a 3-pin DIN in a way, don't they?
Yeah. And there's a few things I could still go into, but as you said, the time is up.
Yeah, I think we better stop. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in from the chat, so I think I'll tick them all off as answered. And once again, thank you, Pierre, for your time, and thank you for that community contribution you make for doing all of this, because people really do love them, and it's a great way to get people interested in making things and electronics as well. You know, and to see that it's also really quite simplified and that you can do it in with a ready-made controller that's open source software. That's a really fun way to do it. So yes, thank you, Pierre, on behalf of the association and the members and so forth. Thank you so much for your contribution here, your talk. And I think we'll have to call that a wrap. Quick reminder to everybody who's attended, please fill out the survey so that we get feedback and we can make these things better, and send us some extra topics. So we always like to hear about what you want to hear about, and so we can make it bigger and better next time. And now, of course, I expect photos on our Facebook, X and LinkedIn pages of your house projects after this. Yes, great. And thank you so much, folks. And thank you again, Pierre. I think that's a wrap. Sabrina, we can say bye-bye and turn it off.